It is time now to bring in our State House insiders. Dave Wilson, our Republican strategist, Antoine Seawright, our Democratic strategist. Guys, early voting has been massive here in South Carolina. More than 1 million people so far casting ballots. And Antoine, early voting ends on Saturday, right?
It does end on Saturday, and thankfully, a bipartisan effort in the South Carolina General Assembly has brought us to this point. This is the first time in our state in a presidential general election we've had the opportunity to vote early, and what it is proven is that people are taking advantage of it. And what I see is excitement on both sides of the aisle, but I certainly see people who I would not ordinarily see paying attention to politics in this election, and that's reflective of the massive lines and massive output we see at the early polling sites all across South Carolina.
JR, one of the biggest things that means for us right now is the fact that more than half of the registered voters back in 2020 have already voted. That is a tremendous statement right now. If you haven't voted yet, you still have at least 2 more days to be able to vote, Friday and Saturday. Of course, Sunday is a day off from voting. But this has been an amazing thing to be able to see the turnout. I mean, people are standing in line in every county of this state for a half hour to an hour just to be able to vote. This is like it used to be back in the day. And so you just see this constant flow of people, and that early voting has a huge impact.
Antoine, why do you think we're seeing so many people vote early, though, this year?
Well, I think because people understand that this is not just an important election, but this is a consequential election. And as I've been traveling the country and as I've been in and out of South Carolina, traveling our state, I've been saying to many communities, in particular, Dave and JR, those who look like mine, that this is a survival vote that Black Americans are casting, because what we're starting to see by the way of the issues and by way of some of the discussions is a simple fact that whomever will have policy-making power in this country will have a large say-so, and this is not a hyperbole, this is not an exaggeration, if you will, whether or not certain communities live or die, forget about thrive or survive. And I think that's why you see fear being a factor. I see frustration, anger, confusion, but also excitement and joy, particularly for Democrats, for what Kamala Harris and Tim Walz have brought to this ticket.
The other part that you really have to keep in mind is the fact that every single state house seat is up for grabs this year. That's 170 members of the General Assembly. So you're not just voting for president. You're voting all the way down ballot, because keep in mind, it's these people that you're voting for that have affected what's going on with your taxes as a resident of South Carolina, for educational issues. So JR, those things have really got to factor in, because we've got big issues that we need to be addressing here in the state, and it goes beyond just what happens at the federal level.
And JR, if I can just say, today's point, school board races have become a very critical conversation all around our state, particularly in Richland County, both Richland 1 and Richland 2, but in particular Richland 1. And I think that's part of the reason why you see the surge in participation in Richland 1. And then there are certain counties, including our neighboring counties, that watch this program faithfully every Thursday, that have issues on the ballot. Like in Richland County, we have an extension of the penny. There are other counties in our state that have similar initiatives on the ballot that have been critical and consequential to the upward mobility of those communities. And so there are many reasons why you see this surge and urge in participation and turnout.
All right, this is not a debate, but I'm going to give you guys a full minute each for a closing argument as to why voters should vote Republican or Democrat. Dave, you want to start?
I think one of the biggest things you have to keep in mind is you got to ask yourself the question, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? What's it like when you go to the grocery store? What's it like when you go to the gas pump? Those are things that we have to keep in mind. And are we going to do those things that are going to rein that back in, and look at policies that do things to protect, the American population? What needs to be done when we start taking a look at the issues of immigration? That has been a key issue, JR, that people have been talking about and dealing with. When you start looking at what needs to be done to reduce regulation in our government to give business the ability to thrive. Now, I know that Kamala Harris has come back through and is offering loans and money to help people start businesses. And that's a fantastic thing. But that money to start businesses comes out of your pocket, comes out of my pocket, and it comes out of your pocket there at home.
All right, Antoine, same to you. A minute. Why should voters vote Democrat?
Oh, I think this election is certainly not about perfection, but it's about progress. I think the contrast could not be clear between the two sides. The contrast could not be clear about who actually has a plan, not just for America, but for our community and for places like the state of South Carolina. Whether you agree with the politics of it or not, Democrats have been good for our state these past 4 years in the White House. The fact of the matter is, we've seen what 4 years of extremism looks like in this country, and we've seen unity, what that looks like these past 4 years. At the end of the day, voters will make their decisions, but I don't want people in South Carolina to be hoodwinked or fooled that we have immigration issues in South Carolina. The only immigration issues we have in South Carolina is what I would call border issues, and that's whether or not people from Lexington County are trying to make their way over to Richland County. We have serious challenges in our state that requires serious leadership, not leadership that wants to divide us, but leadership that wants to unite us and bring together so that we can yell in the places we agree and whisper in the places we disagree. There's only one party who is saying to women, you should be trusted to make your own healthcare decisions. There's only one party invested in America, not for what she was or what she is, but what she can be. That's my party. I ask for your vote and your support at the polls.
All right, Antoine, Dave, as always, guys, thank you so very much for the very